I figured it'd be easier just to do a video response here and talk about these Raumers and what's going on and kind of how I've been dealing with it. So, a couple years ago, kind of ran into the fact that these don't work. And what's basically happening is that this expansion clip, I guess let's take a step back. So this model of bolt, the way it works is that these expansion clips, as you tap the bolt into the hole, are always in contact with they have line contact with the diameter of the hole. So they always want to be touching the rock. So as you try to tighten the bolt down and try to get the bolt to back out of the hole, these kind of stay in place and then travel up these tapered cones here, and then that you can see these are relieved. There's a slot here and a slot here. That should allow these to expand up over the tapered cone and create the mechanical expansion effect that keeps the bolt in the hole. This is a slightly different model of bolt that functions a little differently, but the same principle is in effect. You can see that as you tighten it down and the cone engages into the expansion element, that you've got the mechanical expansion that keeps the bolt in the hole. So ideally, that's what would be happening, and this bolt would be working fine. But the problem is that that's not what happens all the time. So the classic failure for these in our softer schist, and apparently in some of our granite too, is that these expansion clips are underdeployed, like this one specifically. You can see there's kind of a point that the clip just didn't go any further up. We'd really want to see it kind of moved up, maybe like, I don't know, a 16th of an inch or 3/32 of an inch, and have more expansion if we were looking at this in the hole as a cross section. But the clip just seems to get to a certain point and stops. And then the bolt basically just kind of walks itself out of the hole because these act as a cutting edge and effectively ream the hole or bore the hole out on the way out of the hole. So as far as how I tell, I don't. There's no visual indication really, no reliable visual indication of whether or not one of these bolts is functioning or not. The way that I figure this out is I have to inspect them all with a torque wrench. So that's why I kind of refer to this as pulling at loose threads. I literally am doing detective work on first ascent dates and figuring out when this bolt was used, and then going and verifying whether or not there is a Raumer or a likely a Raumer bolt installed in the route, and then putting a torque wrench on it and verifying as to whether or not it actually hits the specification. It's very clear using a torque wrench when one of these bolts does not function. We're talking like it probably backs out of the hole at like 10% of the force. But the torque wrench is kind of a binary thing. It either indicates proper torque or it doesn't. And if it doesn't indicate proper torque, the bolt backs out of the hole, is effectively kind of the way it is. So I guess the big takeaway is that if you're installing mechanical bolts, you really need to be using a torque wrench. It's not necessarily about whether or not you are exactly at the manufacturer specified value. It's more, do you reach the specified value to indicate that the bolt is functioning properly? Like, if the bolt is spec'd for 25 foot-pounds, is it okay if you hit 24 or you hit 26? Yeah, that's fine. But the bigger thing is, do you never hit 10 foot-pounds? Or do you hit something close to 25 foot-pounds? That's really what we're looking for to get out of the torque wrench here. So I would think, I mean, it's hard for me to know, not knowing the entire provenance of these bolts and how they were installed. But my guess would be that none of these bolts are installed using a torque wrench, and that would have been the way that they would have been caught on installation time. Because basically the amount of force that's required on a short 6-inch wrench to make these guys hit spec is really a lot. And I would be surprised if a lot of people are able to actually hit that much torque. So it could very well be that these felt like they were tightening up, but if we had actually used a torque wrench to properly indicate them, they very clearly would have never hit torque. And that would have been the first red flag that something was going on. But anyways, so that's kind of a crash course on these Raumer bolts and what's going on. And yeah, I mean, I'm basically doing the work so that no one else has to worry about this kind of stuff.